What did I tell you? What have I been telling you for the last 2 years? I have said repeatedly that if you want the dumbest take on the Kyle Rittenhouse shootings or any kind of criminal law event, you go to a law professor. Now, I know what you're thinking. Oh, no. You would go to like a Walmart down in deep Alabama, and you go into the Walmart there and you're going to get a dumber take. Oh, no. The person shopping at Walmart in Muddy Boggy Creek, Alabama or whatever has a far better chance of getting something right than a law professor. I have no idea what happens to these dudes once they get hired on with the university. Maybe somebody holds them down while somebody else sucks their brains out. But it's incredible how they can't get anything right. This is perhaps the dumbest take by a supposed legal scholar that I have done so far, and that's saying something. So get ready. You're going on for a real ride for this one. Hello out there. I am trying to get through.
With his powerful brainwaves cradled in the warmth of reasoning, it's time for Johnny Walker Dread to straighten you out on a thing or two. Emanating all the way from exciting Las Vegas, Oklahoma, it's the Johnny Walker Dread Show.
All right, let's read the title. Stop calling Kyle Rittenhouse a hero. He killed 2 unarmed people. And you read this and you think, there's no way in hell this guy knows anything about self-defense. I mean, how could any scholar of the law not know that grabbing a hold of a person's rifle is arming oneself with that rifle? So my first suspicions are that the professor here, Bruce Ledewitz, doesn't have a background in self-defense or gun crimes. Well, let's take a look. Who did they bring in as an expert on this particular article to write about Kyle Rittenhouse's self-defense claims? Well, let's see. Okay, so here's the idiot here. I mean, at first appearance, he looks like he would know something, but yeah, you wait. And we scroll down. Bruce Ledewitz is a professor of law at Duquesne University School of Law. So far, not too bad. He teaches in the area of state and federal constitutional law and jurisprudence. Okay, maybe. Specializing in law and religion and law and the secular. Yeah, this is the person they brought in as an expert.
You want to see Loco?
Ledewitz is co-director of the Duquesne University School of Law's Pennsylvania Constitution website. He's not even from Wisconsin. He's from Pennsylvania. So, Ledewitz writes and speaks widely on a variety of legal and religious topics in both legal journals and popular media. He's the author of 4 books. Now, I'm sure one of these books must be about what? Gun laws or self-defense, but oh, no. His books are American Religious Democracy, Coming to Terms with the End of Secular Politics, Hallowed Secularism, Church, State, and the Crisis in American Secularism, and The Universe is on Our Side, Restoring Faith in American Public Life. Yeah, this is the guy I would hunt down and say, hey, we need somebody to write an article about Kyle Rittenhouse and his gun handling. Yeah, okay, let's get back to the article because it's a doozy. All right, let's go on down here. And the article's old, but I just came across it. Okay, so lighten up. Kyle Rittenhouse, who shot 3 men at a riot in Kenosha, killing 2 of them, was acquitted of all criminal charges. Yay! He got something right. That won't last long. He has been hailed as a hero. True. He has been feted by politicians, including Donald Trump. True. He has been compared to John Wayne as a symbol of law-abiding people fighting back against lawlessness. I don't recall any comparisons to John Wayne. Okay. This is called, by the way, a straw man argument. He's going to lean on this a lot. When he took a rifle to a protest over the earlier police killing of Jacob Blake, Rittenhouse said his intention was to protect property against violence. Yeah, also to help injured protesters. Let's just leave that part out. But the 2 men Rittenhouse killed were unarmed. John Wayne never shot an unarmed man. Well, I'm not so sure that's true, but even so, it doesn't matter. We don't care what John Wayne did. All right, read on. Rittenhouse was acquitted because of changes in the legal understanding of self-defense in recent years. Simply not true. There was no change in the law that allowed Kyle to get away with, as he might put it, with killing these men that came about recently. In fact, if anything, the law had been pretty stable and probably favored him more in the past than it did at that time. So, strike one, you're wrong. Oh! Based on the Rittenhouse verdict, the rest of us are now unsafe around anyone with a gun. Oh, give me a break.
This is like watching the British version of The Office. Like, it's funny, but awkward and sad at the same time.
Yes.
Oh, Lordy. Oh, he's going to drive that one home here pretty soon, so wait. Rittenhouse had been guarding an auto dealership at which several cars had been set on fire when he was confronted by Joseph Rosenbaum, the first man Rittenhouse killed. And right away, we also have now lie number 2. He was not guarding the auto dealership when he was confronted by Joseph Rosenbaum. Not at all.
Quack, quack, quack. Quack, quack. I'm a duck.
No.
I'm a crazy duck.
Evidence showed that Rosenbaum was aggressive and lunged for Rittenhouse's rifle while cursing him. So let's just forget about the fact that Kyle fled and Rosenbaum chased him and caught up to him. We'll just leave that part out. This is a law professor, everybody. This is the guy who grades these essays that students turn in and gets all persnickety when they get some of the facts wrong. But he can't get anything right. Rittenhouse testified that he feared that Rosenbaum would seize the rifle and shoot him. Yeah, I think that's called a reasonable belief that you risk your life or serious bodily injury. Sort of the underpinning of self-defense in this country. The jury found this fear to be reasonable, all 12 members. And this may be a fair interpretation of the current law of self-defense in Wisconsin. Okay, he's saying, well, okay, it might have been considered self-defense, but it shouldn't be. But that is precisely the problem. In other words, it shouldn't be the law. No, as a law professor, you should know better than go down this, what should be the law path. The law is the law as it is written, not what you think it should be. The law doesn't care about your feelings. No one actually knows what Rosenbaum intended. Okay, sure. But you can't also assume that he had good intentions. Certainly not with Joseph Rosenbaum. Rittenhouse admitted that he pointed his rifle at him. Wait, what? Wait. First of all, is he talking about the first time when Joseph ambushed him or the time when Kyle shot him? Well, if he's talking about the time when he was ambushed, there is no evidence whatsoever to that, and Kyle certainly did not admit to anything like that on the stand. If he's talking about the second instance where Rosenbaum caught up to him, since Kyle shot him, he probably pointed his rifle at him. A law professor, everybody.
He's crazy, man.
He clearly did not act in self-defense because he pointed his gun at the burglar.
Well, how's he supposed to shoot the guy if he doesn't point his gun at him? Yeah, this is what they teach in law now, everybody. This is insane. If you point your gun at a viable threat to your safety, you're at fault because you pointed the gun at the person. It goes on. Rosenbaum might have intended simply to disarm a dangerous man. Oh, well, he might have intended also to bash Kyle's brains in and then shoot him. How in the hell are you supposed to know? How the hell is anyone supposed to know? Well, we can guess. Looking at this thing from the outside in, we can tell by looking at the fact that, Joseph Rosenbaum is a maniac. He is a meth addict who was in a mental hospital earlier in the day. He was suicidal. He has a long, violent criminal past. Child rapist and domestic violence abuser, repeated. So, given all that, it's not hard to deduce that Rosenbaum's intentions might not have been so altruistic. And now, what about Kyle Rittenhouse? No criminal record whatsoever. And on video, he's shown to be kind of a jovial, easygoing kind of kid. So you put those two together and you get the impression that probably Joseph Rosenbaum actually meant to hurt Kyle, especially since he threatened to kill Kyle earlier in the evening. No mention of that, by the way. But you may think, oh, this is terrible. Oh, no. It gets far worse. The acquittal means that the person holding the gun gets to decide who lives and who dies. Yeah, that's true, no matter what. Of course the person holding the gun gets to decide who lives and who dies. This is a law professor, everybody. Listen to the logic. I just love the he pointed his gun at the person when he claimed self-defense. Jeez. Okay, let's get on here with it. You can see where this interpretation of self-defense can lead in the trial of the three men who were convicted of killing Ahmaud Arbery, an unarmed black jogger running through a suburb of Brunswick, Georgia. One of the men charged, Travis McMichael, said that Arbery lunged for his gun. McMichael was convicted of malice murder, so this defense failed. But George Barnhill, the second prosecutor in the case, who later recused himself, refused to prosecute on just this basis. At the point Arbery grabbed the shotgun under Georgia law, McMichael was allowed to use deadly force to protect himself. As a law professor, you should know that you can't judge the merits of one case based on what happened in another case. Very well that McMichael was not prosecuted because of something that kind of resembled what happened in the Kyle Rittenhouse case. But you cannot use that as a logical argument. Every one of these cases is unique in its own way. You see what happens when you have a lot of brains like me? You start sounding rational and reasonable. John Wayne would not have shot a man he knew was unarmed, as Rittenhouse did. The Duke would have defended himself against non-lethal force by use of his fists.
Hey, I'm the most local person in here.
Okay, hey, Mr. Ledewitz, are you going to apply this to women as well? Is this your argument? That if a person is unarmed, you cannot shoot them because you can put up your dukes and beat the living hell out of him. A little 80-year-old woman, are you going to use this argument for her? What about any woman who encounters a man who's bigger and stronger? You're saying that she cannot use a gun to protect herself, that she has to use her fists? Are you James Krause? Are you the same person? Are people expected to just take a whooping? Is that your argument, Mr. Law Professor?
That was Loco, but not in an entertaining way.
And since when does it matter what John Wayne would have done? John Wayne was what, maybe 6'5", 250? Kyle is 140 pounds wet. And not an experienced fighter. We kind of saw that in that brawl that took place along the lakeside there. However, Jojo Rosenbaum was an experienced fighter. He was a lunatic, and he had been engaging in brawls and fights in prison for 14 years. He was a tough nut. Kyle would have stood no chance against him. But according to Mr. Law Professor here, that's how Kyle should have handled it. And by the way, Kyle was a minor, 17 years old. So, Mr. Law Professor, are you saying that a minor has to put up his fists and take on a 30-year-old adult ex-felon? Really? I told you it was getting dumb. After Rittenhouse killed Rosenbaum, he made a phone call to a friend saying that he had just killed someone. That's true. He did not seek medical attention for the man on the ground. Doesn't have to. He did not call the police. Doesn't have to and wouldn't have mattered. Like, why would you call the police? You have a man who's shot on the ground. What are the police going to do? Instead, oh my God. Instead, he continued his armed patrolling. Oh, jeez. Let that one soak in a minute, everybody. Let that soak in. This is a law professor telling you that after Kyle Rittenhouse shot Rosenbaum, he just went on his merry way patrolling the streets.
Field. Yeah, I'm crazy. I'm the Loco one.
I can't believe it. I can't believe it. Oh, I can. I'm sorry. I can. It's a law professor. What can you expect? Anthony Huber, the second man killed, considered Rittenhouse to be dangerous. Really? Did you interview him? Huber's girlfriend said in an interview that Huber rushed Rittenhouse to protect her and others nearby. So you go over here to the link, and if you read it, she says nothing of the sort. She probably assumed it, but I'm not certain I'm going to be giving Anthony Huber the benefit of the doubt on that one. I've said it many times. Anthony Huber did not go to try to save others. He went there to get some licks in on what he saw was a political opponent. Kyle was clearly running to the police. He could see the police down the road. Huber tried to stop him from getting there. Now, I know some people are saying I'm not being fair to Anthony Huber. Fine. I'm just telling you what I would put my money on. If somebody said, look, I have an envelope here that tells the true story about why Anthony Huber chased Kyle down, my money would be on him trying to bash some kid's head in. It had nothing to do with him trying to stop an active shooter. But that's just me. But it's certainly not a given that he tried to save the neighborhood. Huber struck Rittenhouse with a skateboard that he always carried and reached for Rittenhouse's rifle, tried to arm himself with Kyle's gun. That is when Rittenhouse shot him once, fatally wounding him. Okay, you got that right. Oh, here we go. Okay, whenever they say clearly or obviously, put your boots on. It's going to get deep. Clearly, Huber was not trying to shoot Rittenhouse, but to disarm him. You don't know what he would have done if he had gotten a hold of Kyle's rifle. However, I actually tend to believe that part. I think that Anthony Huber would have taken Kyle's rifle and then just started stomping on him, and the rest of the mob would have joined in. Kyle would have had 10 guys there beating the crap out of him. That's what would have happened if Kyle hadn't shot him. Huber was not going to take his rifle and then march him to the police because Kyle was already running to the police. Huber could have just let him go. All right. As the events of that night demonstrated, he was not wrong to fear that Rittenhouse was irresponsibly dangerous. Okay, I'm sorry, that's kind of stupid, but fine. Huber's courage cost him his life. No, Huber's stupidity cost him his life. You have a kid you think might have shot somebody, and he's running to the cops. He's not shooting anyone. He's running, and he's trying to make it to the police. You let him go. If you try to attack a kid carrying an AR-15 rifle, you get everything you got coming to you. John Wayne would not have fired his weapon at Huber, just as John Wayne would have led the police to Rosenbaum's body. How could John Wayne have led the police to Rosenbaum's body if, as he's trying to run to the police, he gets attacked?
You're embarrassing yourself.
Hey, Mr. Law Professor, did you ever think about that? Did you ever stop to think that Kyle Rittenhouse was running to the police? We know that. You could see the police in the distance. There's no doubt he's going there. He even told Gage Grosskreutz as he was running that he was trying to make it to the police. Ironically, there was someone in Kenosha that night who embodied. Oh no. Okay, I gotta stop here for a moment. Okay, are you guys ready? Ironically, there was someone in Kenosha that night who embodied the grace and restraint. Okay, I'm going to start over. Try this again. Ironically, there was someone in Kenosha that night who embodied the grace and restraint of John Wayne. Gage Grosskreutz. The man Rittenhouse wounded after killing Huber. Yeah, you know, when I think of Gage Grosskreutz, I think John Wayne. Oh, man. Grosskreutz, who was at the protest to provide medical care, like Kyle, and who was carrying a handgun, like Kyle, well, he was armed with a gun, like Kyle, was told that Rittenhouse had shot someone and was trying to get away. No, Kyle told him. He interviewed Kyle. He ran alongside Kyle while Kyle was running to the police, and Kyle told him. He saw Rittenhouse fire at Huber and moved directly toward him with his own gun visible. That's called a deadly threat, by the way. If you knew anything about like the law, you would know that. He and Rittenhouse confronted each other. Grosskreutz did not fire like an idiot. Rittenhouse did. Yeah, which one's smarter? Rittenhouse did not hesitate to shoot. Right, like you're not supposed to hesitate. When is hesitation ever a good thing? Did not assess the situation. Right, because you see, when Gage Grosskreutz pointed the gun at Kyle, Kyle should have assessed the situation. Like, well, let's see here. How many shots has he fired? He hasn't fired any shots. I think that the gun is probably loaded. Now, what about his intent? I don't know. He's pointing a gun at me. I think that might mean he's out to kill me. Now, let's see here. Now, if I add that all up together, maybe I should shoot him. You're right. Kyle didn't assess the situation like you wanted him to, which is why he's still alive. Did not act like an adult who understood the responsibility of possessing a firearm, but Gage did. Gage was carrying a gun illegally. We know that. But he's the responsible one. Oh my gosh. Rittenhouse is alive today because Grosskreutz did not shoot. Yeah, that's why it's called good self-defense. You know, the self-defense that he likes, the person ends up dead. You know, a guy comes into your house at night, he's got a gun, and you assess the situation. He's pointing the gun at me. Maybe I should shoot him. Well, I don't know. Let me think about this. Blam, blam, blam. You lay on the ground, bleeding out, and according to him, that's how you're supposed to act in self-defense. You hesitate. That's really important because that's what John Wayne would have done. And you assess the situation and you don't act until you get shot. And how do you know who was acting in the right kind of self-defense, the perfect self-defense? Whoever died. That's his standard. The person who dies is the one in the right.
Loco! Huh?
By the jury's reasoning, he had every right to kill Rittenhouse as they pointed guns at each other. Right? This is where the madness of the current interpretation of self-defense has brought us. Oh no. Oh, this is going to get bad. Proponents of the Second Amendment right to bear arms applauded the Rittenhouse verdict. Of course. But they should not have done so. Kyle Rittenhouse has exploded the myth that guns make us safer. It made Rittenhouse safer. 2 men are dead, Rittenhouse not one of them, and one wounded only because Rittenhouse was carrying a rifle. So you see, everybody, in his mind, it's better for Kyle to have been beaten to death than for him to defend himself by shooting others. So according to his logic, you have 3 or 4 guys breaking your house at night, and they got guns and they're out to kill you, and you shoot them dead. Well, in his mind, you're in the wrong. This is a terrible use of the gun, because if you'd allowed them to kill you, well, only 1 person would have died instead of 3. This is the law professor giving us his take on what is proper self-defense.
That's more like, zany or goofy.
Yeah.
It's the wrong kind of loco.
And you think, well, come on, Johnny, you're exaggerating. No, that's his argument. He's saying it right here. The number of people who died determines whether the use of the gun was proper. Conservatives sometimes assert that the violence of looting and arson at demonstrations is what provokes counter-violence. This was not really counter-violence, I'm sorry, but okay. The irony of Kenosha is that Rittenhouse did not protect property. Oh, he absolutely did. We have him on video protecting property. He absolutely did. He simply took life. False. He not only protected property, he actually bandaged a few wounded protesters. We have him on film, and we have eyewitness testimony to that. And nobody can deny that he protected property. He's seen on video doing that. And guess what? The property he was protecting was not damaged. Now, he had help, but he was one of those protecting property. Here is what may happen next. Oh, I love this part. Armed men will begin attending the rallies of their political opponents. They now have little to fear from any confrontation. They are now free to engage in intimidation. They now know that in any encounter in which it can be said that someone lunged for their gun, they are free to shoot. He just got telling us that the McMichaels were convicted. So why doesn't the McMichael trial teach us the opposite? This will lead, of course, to the arming of their political opponents, who will say they need to do this in pure self-defense. According to the Rittenhouse jury, in any resulting armed confrontation, the first one to fire is not guilty.
Man, you are so loco, man.
Yeah, this is a law professor. The jury did not make any such claim. It did not come down to who fired first. That was never an element of the crime. Yes, it turns out that Kyle did fire first and was able to live, but at no point did the jury make any kind of claim that he who fires first is automatically innocent. Oh, now he's going to tell us that this is all bad for us. Okay. Proponents of gun rights do not understand that this situation will not be tolerated. Eventually, the right to bear arms in public will be severely restricted. Yeah, that could happen. But if you have to give up your right to self-defense for you to keep your right to bear arms, then the right to bear arms isn't really much use anymore. So you might as well use it. So if Wisconsin passes a law that curtails the right to bear arms in some way, I'm not going to blame Kyle for it. There's no point of having a right if you can't exercise it. Do you see how smart I am? How reasonable and rational? But he gets the law professor position. If the Rittenhouse verdict represents the current law of self-defense, then banning guns is the only way for the rest of us to be safe at public events. Oh, so we're going to get even. We don't like this Rittenhouse verdict, so we're going to start banning guns. You see what you did? You see what you did? What happened in Kenosha was a tragedy. Obviously, it was a tragedy for the men killed and wounded. But it was also a tragedy for Kyle Rittenhouse, who is now a killer. Oh, this is the old, I feel sad for my political opponent bit. Does this fool anybody? How depressed do you think that he is for Kyle Rittenhouse? Oh, and one more thing, guys. This whole notion that because something like this happens, that the world is going to come apart. We've heard this a few times. Let's see here. Oh, yeah. When Utah passed a law that allowed people to carry guns onto college campuses, what did we hear? There was going to be mayhem. Every campus would turn into the OK Corral. It was the same in Texas. They even had one Texas professor who quit and moved to Australia because he was so terrified that the students would bring guns to campus and there would be shootouts every day. None of this stuff materialized. Utah has not had any incidences as far as I know. And I don't believe I've heard anything happen in Texas either. We heard the same thing in Oklahoma. When we had constitutional carry, the streets would turn into war zones. Well, I mean, crime is probably about the same. I'm not one to say that open carry or concealed carry reduces crime by any measurable amount. I think it helps in certain isolated incidences, and I certainly want to carry a gun. But at the same time, the idea that constitutional carry leads to shootouts and open warfare is just propaganda. It doesn't happen. Life goes on pretty much just like it did before, but now you at least have the ability to defend yourself. Okay, we move on. The adults who encouraged Rittenhouse to go to the protest, who did that? I don't think anybody encouraged him to go to the protest. And carry a rifle are equally responsible for this tragedy. Again, I don't think I know anybody that did that. It is too bad they were not charged. For what? What would be the charge, Mr. Law Professor, who knows Wisconsin's self-defense laws inside and out? The people who now praise what Rittenhouse did are also to blame. Oh, people like me? I mean, I don't praise him for what he did, but I defend him for what he did. The only good that can come from the events in Kenosha will be the curbing of the right to bear arms and the reform of the law of self-defense. Hopefully, that will transpire before there are any more shootings. Okay. So they go on, the Pennsylvania Capital Star has this agreement with this particular Wisconsin newspaper. As I said, he's not from Wisconsin. He doesn't know Wisconsin self-defense laws. He doesn't understand self-defense law at all. The idea that grabbing hold of a person's rifle is an attempt to arm oneself and is therefore considered a deadly threat got by him. He doesn't know that. He doesn't understand anything about what happened that night. He didn't do any research whatsoever. The idea that Kyle just strolled around patrolling after he shot Rosenbaum, how could he have possibly watched any of the video footage? Okay, everybody, again, I've said it before and I'll say it again. To have an informed opinion, to where somebody would invite you to give your take on the Kyle Rittenhouse shootings, you should be very knowledgeable about Wisconsin gun laws and Wisconsin self-defense laws and have a really good handle on what happened that night. You should have watched the videos and you should have followed the trial. And if you didn't do those things, you should not be on here shooting your mouth off.
So with this bandana, I welcome you to the game.